The final minutes of Longstreet's July 3rd assault on Cemetery Ridge was chaotic and disorganized. Regiments from both the North and the South were intermixed and jumbled. Who was fighting who and where is still often a topic of discussion. To define their locations during the third day's attack, one regiment would mark their positions with 3 stone markers. This regiment is the 13th Vermont Infantry. Today, these 3 markers can be found south of the copse of trees located on both sides of Hancock Avenue. The 13th Vermont Infantry was a 9-month regiment mustering into United States service in October 1862, mustering out in July 1863. Gettysburg was their only major battle, losing over 100 killed, wounded, and captured. In April 1887, members of the Vermont Commission visited Gettysburg to begin the process of determining where the regimental monuments would be located. The commission, composed of veterans, toured the battlefield and then visited the area occupied during the battle by Stannard's 2nd Vermont Brigade. Albert Clark, representing the 13th Vermont Infantry, took note of the position occupied by the right of the regiment. He notes the right of the 13th was near a black walnut tree, which still stands there, though many of its branches were broken by shells and hundreds of bullets were embedded in it. This witness tree of the battle still stands and is known as the Gibbon tree, remembering General John Gibbon's July 3rd wounding nearby. The 13th Vermont granite position markers, of which there are 3, were erected in 1889 by the members of the 13th Vermont Infantry. These markers allowed visitors, in a way, to follow in the footsteps of those of the 13th on July 3rd, 1863. This first marker identifies location of the regiment's original line of battle. In this exposed position, the regiment would be laying down, doing their best to avoid the constant firing of sharpshooters and the occasional artillery round, while suffering from the effects of a scorching sun. The second position marker is approximately 180 feet west of the regiment's first position. This position marks the location where members of the regiment constructed a makeshift breastworks. Lieutenant Albert Clark, commanding Company G, noticed a nearby rail fence that could be removed and converted into a protective barrier. This barrier would provide the regiment with a fortified position if an attack occurred on their front. With permission of the colonel, volunteers would disassemble the rail fence and construct a bulwark parallel with the line of battle, nearly 2 feet in height. When completed, the volunteers would return to the ranks, receiving cheers and congratulations from their comrades. This protective barrier would prove useful in the afternoon's Confederate attack. With the commencement of the afternoon artillery exchange, the men of the 13th, anticipating a Confederate frontal attack, rushed forward, taking cover behind the rail fence bulwark constructed that morning. Here the regiment was located further down the slope, in less danger from the enemy's artillery fire, with an open field to their front. The men could watch for approaching columns and other movements of the enemy. As the artillery fire began to slow through dense smoke, the Vermonters could see long columns of approaching Confederate battle lines. Making ready, the Green Mountain Boys were ordered to fire at the right oblique as Southern soldiers reached the Emmitsburg Road. As a wave of Southerners were reaching the now famous angle, General Standard, commanding the Vermonters, would order several regiments to change position, wheeling to the right. This movement placed the Vermonters on the flank of the attacking lines of General George Pickett's Virginians. Now moving steadily northward, the men of the 13th closed on the right flank of Pickett's men, continuing to deliver volley after volley until the Southerners, due to high casualties, began to throw down their weapons, raising their arms in surrender. Today, when we stand at the third marker, the position where the 13th Vermont halted their flank attack on Pickett's division, and look back southward, we see the ground covered by the regiment. Their first major engagement, this untested regiment performed heroically. For us today, thanks to those veterans that were here and documented in stone the positions they held, we can walk the same ground as they did and, in our minds, in some ways, relive that fateful day, July 3rd, 1863. The three position markers would indicate the regiment would have moved approximately 800 feet on July 3rd. Although the distance traveled is not extreme, we need to allow for the time required to manage and move their line of battle, all in the confusion of the engagement. When one studies the engraved lettering on each of the 13th Vermont's position markers, it can sometimes be difficult to decipher. This issue was noted by the veterans of the 17th Vermont Infantry. Vermont's Bennington banner of April 22, 1892 noted, "This design of marker is like the marker of the 13th, but the lettering thereon is not deep enough. It is hardly readable already." I wonder how those that designed the 13th's markers took this critique from their fellow compatriots. Following the war, very few northern regiments would erect markers, recreating in a sense their movements during the battle. The veterans of the 13th Vermont did mark their positions of July 3rd. However, we will never be able to experience the noise and confusion, the chaos they experienced at these locations. The next time you're in Gettysburg, walk where the men of the 13th did, stop and scan the field, and contemplate what did occur at these historic points. While preparing this video, I was standing near the gibbon tree when my wife Linda said to me, "Did you see the walnuts above your head? The pattern looks familiar." and when I looked, sure enough, the walnuts resembled the trefoil of the Second Corps. Those old veterans continue to remind us that they were here.